Welcome to a tutorial for Disney's Brother Bear, any percent speedrun. The main features of the run are simple movement and fun to use glitches. Before we move to the gameplay, there are a couple things we have to talk about before and after installing the game. Before you install the game, make sure you are installing in the folder with a path that contains 2 spaces at minimum. If you are installing to the default path, it should be okay, as it already contains more than 2 spaces. Once you install the game, create a shortcut on the desktop, then open its properties, and at the end of the target line, write -window to force the game to open in the windowed mode. Additionally, bind the shortcut key, preferably F1. These 3 things are required for optimal usage of one of the glitches. Now let's move to the gameplay itself. First, let's talk about in-game settings. The first important thing worth mentioning is that you can bind 2 buttons to each action. If you bind 2 buttons for forward or backwards, if you press both of them, you are gonna accelerate faster, which saves a couple frames every time you start moving. Similarly, using both buttons to turn left or right will make you spin twice as fast. Also, bind cutscene skip to a button you can comfortably hold during entire run. The rest of the binds are just personal preference. For example, I don't strafe at all. Since the game mechanics heavily break on high FPS, we require capping your game to 120 FPS. To prevent people with better hardware get unfair advantage over people with lower end PCs. You can cap your FPS with any third-party software. Examples of programs could be Riva Tuner, Bandicam, and DxStory. Since the game doesn't support mouse controls, the only way to move your camera is to use turn buttons. The game has 3 ledge grab animations, and whichever you get depends on how high is the ledge you are grabbing. Try to avoid getting the long one as much as possible. The main technique used throughout the run is a combination of 2 glitches, reloads and brightness boosting. First I'm gonna explain the reloads. If you open the game while it's running, short fadeout will play, and if you do it in the menu, the game will continue playing in the background. You can easily force the reload by pressing the key you bound to shortcuts as instructed at the beginning of the video. If your reload key is delayed, kill the process application frame host in Task Manager. If the reload key doesn't work at all, make sure your installation path is correct and ask for help on the Discord linked below. The next trick is brightness boosting. Whenever you change brightness in settings while climbing a ledge, KNI is sent slightly into the air. Normally you have to unpause the game after every change of the brightness. However, if you reload the game, you can constantly change the brightness to chain the boosts. Usually, clicking the brightness slider with just a mouse is enough to get most of the boosts. However, if you want to boost very high, you also have to use left and right arrow keys. Delay of the boost determines in which direction KNI is sent. If you boost early into animation, you're gonna get sent backward. However, if you boost late into the animation, you're gonna get sent forward. That's why most of the boosts are gonna be delayed. Some clips in the tutorial will be using the debug mode, which is a very useful tool for practicing. However, it's not allowed to be used during the runs. The link to the guide about setting up and using the debug mode will be linked in the description. Now it's time to move to the gameplay itself. The setup for one of the strats begins even before you start a run. Preferably, you should start a run on 5th safe slot, while leaving the second one empty. It keeps the menuing less annoying later on in the run when we restart the game. Since timer starts on the first load, you can watch first cutscene as much as you want until you're ready. Once you start holding cutscene skip buttons, it will start skipping every cutscene you trigger, so you don't need to spam it. Just keep in mind you have to repress it every time you reload the game. If your timer doesn't start automatically or doesn't remove loads at all, please reach out for help on Discord. The first level is basically a scripted death, so you want to jump into the river as soon as possible. The best way to do that is to hold both turn buttons as the game loads and ring the cutscene skip. Then, when Bear is facing perpendicular to the river, just hold forward and jump at the very edge. If you want to save a bit more time, you can open the pause menu and reload instantly to save fractions of a second, as it cancels the fadeout during map transition. The first actual level starts with very lengthy cutscene. Sadly, some cutscenes in this game are not skippable, and this is the longest one of them. Right after that, we are met with a choice. We can either go forward and trigger another unskippable cutscene, or you can try to jump over its collision. It saves 4 seconds, however it's pretty tricky. My way of doing it is to turn left until you face the tree, start moving towards it, and as soon as you start walking up the slope, jump. Your goal is to jump on top of the weird collision of the tree roots. Once you get there, just turn right, accumulate a bit of speed, and jump over it. It's actually one of the harder jumps in the game, so don't worry if you keep failing it on your first runs. One of the cutscenes you will hit afterwards will instruct you how to break the bushes. You should preactively tap left mouse button a couple times while entering this cutscene, so you break the bush as soon as possible. Just make sure not to tap it too many times, as after the cutscene, Kinney may go and break the second bush. Afterwards, follow the intended path while collecting some acorns just to make sure you stay healthy for the next map. Once you arrive at small water pool, you will have to perform your first brightness boost of the run. This one is actually pretty tricky to work with, since you only have an option to get small ledge grab. You want to pause the game as soon as you grab the ledge, open the settings menu, then reload, and keep clicking the brightness slider with your left mouse button throughout the entire ledge grab animation. Controlling your boost this way allows you to start the boost with going upwards and then forward, which is very important in this case because you want to get on top of the stone in front of you. If you stop clicking too early, you're not gonna get enough height to get on top of the stone, and if you start boosting too late, you're gonna get stuck inside it. Once you get on top, go to the other boulder on your right, and then jump on top of invisible collision above the bushes. The collision has pretty wide radius, so you should be fine. Once there, jump on a shelf to your right, and then jump down, and proceed to continue the level, going the intended way to the right. You can skip the bouncy branch by going straight into the rock to your right and jumping right before touching it. Once there, you can just go around the rock formation or just boost on top of it. The optimal way to get the boost is to grab the ledge from the highest spot on the rock you're standing on to get the medium ledge grab and then boost 3 times late into the animation. If you accidentally get long ledge grab animation, just wait even later into the animation, pause the game and manually change brightness once without reloading. Once up there, just go towards the entrance to the alcove, trigger the cutscene, and move to the duel. The easiest consistent way to beat the hunter is to stunlock him on the rock in the middle of the map. The closer you get to him, the less risk you take. Start walking towards the hunter as soon as the cutscene skip ends, and stun him whenever you see him stop moving. For the safe strat, you should stand right next to the hunter and push him directly onto the stone. He should slide down on the slope, causing the delay in him standing up. You need to attack him 3 times to win. The risky strat involves standing in a very specific spot to manipulate Hunter's AI to go towards you, making it possible to beat him without getting closer. It saves only 2 seconds and is still very RNG heavy, so I don't recommend going for it unless you're going for record attempts. Now it's time for a simple but fun level. Keep holding your forward buttons and on the first crossroad go to the right. Press the jump key on somewhere on the blue ice, so Kinney doesn't miss Orca Totem midair. After you land, try to stay on the left side of the slide and activate your Orca. Once you enter the steep slope down and build enough speed, start spamming the jump button. As long as you keep jumping, you will not lose any speed. You should stay about 3/4 to the left. If your position is off, you will have to stop jumping at the entrance to the cave. Your goal is to get the second Orca Totem on the left side tunnel just after entering the cave. If your position is off, just slow down, stop jumping, adjust, and make sure you grab this Orca Totem because it's very important. Once you get to the next very steep slope, activate your Orca and slide down. Tap right a couple times to make sure you're gonna enter the right side tunnel. Start jumping right before passing the rocks at the bottom of the slope. To leave the map as fast as possible, tap out of the game and put your cursor on top of Kinney's left paw and spam left mouse button. That way, cursor should be on top of the no button as soon as the window pops up. Lava Land is one of the toughest level of the run. The first skip is very early into the level. You have to jump over a vetted bush, using the rock's collision to boost yourself up by jumping up the slope. Afterwards, you have to follow the intended path by jumping down the rock formations. Jumping down involves losing a bit of health, so if you prefer to stay safe, you can just drop down without pressing the jump button. Once you get all the way down, you can brightness boost of the next ledge to avoid getting bonus ledge grab afterwards. If you get medium ledge grab, you can boost on top of the stone next to the bouncy pad to avoid triggering the cutscene. Once you jump off the bouncy pad, turn towards the ledge you're jumping to, and after you grab it, start boosting. The boost should be somewhat delayed, and you have to boost quite a bit, so delay the boost and then spam with both mouse button and arrow keys for at least half a second. You should end up on the shelf above you. To get down, you have to jump on top of some collision. First jump on top of that tree, then jump on top of stalagmite, and then you can just jump all the way down and then towards the rock formation in the middle. The drop onto the stalagmite is actually very tricky, so if you prefer, turn your camera to make sure you can see it and then drop on top of it. It's still somewhat tricky, but definitely a lot safer. Alternatively, if you prefer not to boost up and you have some spare health, you can go for the other strat. If you follow the intended path a bit more, you can see a tree to your right. Jump on a small rock next to it, then face the tree, and while holding forward jump to it to land on weird collision of its roots, then turn, jump on top of the red bush, and then move on to jump next to it. After that you can follow the path from the previous strat. You can save a bit of walking by going between the bush and the chasm. Once you go past the safe stone, you will see a small ledge on your path. Grab it as far right as the game allows you, and when you are ready, reload and spam boosting as much as possible because this boost is actually very high and you have very little time to work with. Once up there, make sure you don't drop down to the left of the tree as it results in a softlock. Once you safely drop down, go towards the totem you should see in the distance to finish the level. Similarly to the previous hunter fight, we want to manipulate this one so we can beat him consistently as fast as possible. Right after the level loads, turn right and go behind the bone you can see next to the hill. The hunter should eventually come within a couple seconds. However, if you jump over the small gap to your left, it's guaranteed he will come instantly, so you can shout right after turning around. The next level starts off with pretty difficult parkour. As the level loads, you want to turn around so the camera faces the correct direction and then walk backwards until you reach the place where the ground is peaking. Now you want to jump on top of invisible collision between the trees. Stand close to the wall and go forward towards the collision and jump the moment you start going down the slope. Once you get there, the second jump on top of the first bush should be pretty easy. However, the jump on the second bush is actually pretty difficult. You have to jump very late. This parkour segment is actually one of the most important parts to practice before the runs. Once you get on top of the last bush, jump through the gap between the rocks and pause your game for 20 seconds. Normally, if you would just jump down, Kenai would have died from fall damage. However, we can abuse one of the game mechanics to avoid fall damage. If you are not doing anything for 20 seconds, Kenai is eventually gonna play sitting animation, and whenever you start moving again, he's gonna do standing up animation. Timer ticks even when the game is paused, so we can abuse the standing up animation to cancel the fall damage. You can pause the game whenever while falling down. However, the earlier you pause, the earlier you regain controls over Kenai. Once you get down, go across the river, climb the first ledge, and prepare for new boosting technique. As you probably know, whenever you start holding a button, after a moment, Windows will keep repeating its inputs. If you do it in the menu, the brightness will keep changing repeatedly. This effect will happen until the marker reaches either end of the slider. If you grab the marker with your left mouse button beforehand, whenever you move your mouse, the marker will come back to its initial spot. That way, you can repeatedly change the brightness as long as the ledge grab animation continues. What you want to do is to grab the ledge to your left, delay the boost by about a second, and then start auto boosting. Your goal is to boost above the mountain straight to the river. You want to delay that boost to avoid getting sent backwards. Once you drop down to the river, follow its current until you find a safe stone. Behind the safe stone there is a cave that leads to another duel with a hunter, but we want to skip it. Important fact, whenever you hold left mouse button near the safe stone, it keeps saving the game. We want to abuse it by saving the game during map transition. You know you get it if the game keeps saving when the health bar and the rest of the GUI already disappeared. Whenever the next map loads, just do Alt F4 and reopen the game. The fastest way to do that is to press the reload key. At the beginning of the tutorial, I recommended starting on the 5th save slot because it's the closest to the button load the game. After the game reopens, the new cutscene should play. Go downhill towards the coda. To skip the dam, jump on the lowest log and then on top of other one on the left side of the dam. Position yourself at the edge of the rock formation next to the dam. Face the direction the river flows, but slightly towards the middle of the dam. And jump twice while holding forward. Now follow the river current to leave the map. The next level is very simple. You just want to lose as fast as possible. To do that, just avoid the air bubbles at the bottom of the river. You can still save time by boosting in the final cutscene, however, you have to boost very late into the animation. To quickly confirm finishing the level, put your cursor below Koda's head and to the left of his pose. the last map of the game is another hunter duel. Similarly to the previous ones, we want to manipulate him in a way we can beat him as soon as possible. At the start of the duel, the Nahi always runs to the right. You want to run the same direction and stop for a bit on the snow patch between two rocks. It should always force him to run to the other side of the frozen puddle. At the edge of this puddle, you should be able to notice two snow patches. Stand on the corner of the puddle close to the right snow patch. Stop there for about half a second, turn around towards the cliff, and walk up towards the hunter until you are in range to knock him out. At that point, hunter should already be going towards the edge. Whenever you are lined up, stun him and throw him out of the edge. Unlike the previous hunter, this one has an option to climb back if he's thrown out of the edge. You can prevent it by standing exactly at this point he's supposed to come back from. After standing there for about 18 seconds, the health bar of the hunter should disappear, which indicates the end of the run. That's it for the tutorial, thank you for watching and good luck in your attempts.